Hello, welcome to the Rational Homer. I am your host, Kyle. You may know me from my blog called Kyle's Corner on WordPress that I've had for the past many years. I haven't really been posting much lately because it's been stressful to write about sports just because I'm very a perfectionist and I care a lot about my editing and making sure the wording is right. If I forget something, get very unhappy for that. So this year, we are going to try podcasting and talking about the same things: Iowa State football, Iowa State basketball, baseball, and occasionally the NFL. I do have a lot of thoughts on the Iowa State football program and new head coach, but we will save those for a later date since we are in the midst of basketball season. And March Madness will be upon us in a little over 2 weeks. Iowa State had 2 games this past week. The first game they played on Monday, February 16th. They played the number 2 rated Houston Cougars at home. It was a very good game. Houston, in my opinion, is a potential Final Four team with their great guard play. And they have one of the best freshmen in the country in Kingston Florence. He made a lot of good shots, a lot of tough contested shots. He ended up with 22 points, which was the game leader by far. But Iowa State was down 10 in the second half with about 7 or 8 minutes left, and they came back and closed the game on a 17-4 run to win by 3, 70-67. Key plays down the stretch were a 3 by freshman Jamarian Bateman, and then the go-ahead 3 by Nate Heisey, who made 3 3-pointers in the game, and was probably the player of the game with his defense and his guarding ability, and he made 3 threes. Once Bateman made that 3 to pull us within 1 possession, Milan Momcilovic, the best 3-point shooter in the country, was at the scorer's table set to check back in. Once Bateman made that 3, he got up and went back to the bench. And him and TJ just kind of decided it was Bateman's moment as a freshman. And defensively, I think he's better than Milan. He can move better side to side and is a little bit quicker. Milan does have a little bit of length or height on him, I guess. But overall, it was a very exciting game, a potential Big 12 championship tournament game, and a potential Elite 8 or Final Four matchup in the NCAA tournament. Iowa State got great play again out of Blake Buchanan, their center. He ended up with 10 points. He gets most of his points either on putbacks or passes by Joshua Jefferson, which is really nice. Other than that, there wasn't a whole lot of great flashy plays. Just solid defense by both teams. And Iowa State definitely struggled at the free throw line as they shot 50%, 11 for 22. They shot 11 more free throws than Houston, but in total they only made 4 more free throws than Houston. The turnover game, Iowa State only had 3 total turnovers for the game, which, coming off their previous couple games where they were averaging, they had over 10, and that was really good for them. That's mainly because of Taven Lipsey, the senior, who is arguably, I would say, probably the best point guard in Iowa State history. He does it all. He gets rebounds, he gets assists, he can score high off the glass, and he's always the first one on the floor, it seems like. He is the leader, and the team is completely different without him on the floor. So hopefully he continues to stay healthy. Joshua Jefferson is our other big player besides Milan and Taylor. And he had a pretty solid game. He had 6 rebounds, 12 points, and 5 assists. He was 1 for 5 on 3. Really wouldn't like him taking 5 threes a game. Maybe 2 to 3. He's an okay 3-point shooter. I wouldn't say he's great or anything. And for Houston, back to Fleming. I mean, Fleming was incredible. I mean, he would just drive into the lane. He didn't look like a freshman. And he's definitely going to go to the NBA after his first year. And then they have 2 other great guards in Milo Suzan and Emmanuel Sharp. Sharp was hot early from 3. Then he kind of got in foul trouble. And he ended up with 16 points. But other than that, he was kind of held ineffective in the second half. Just with the foul trouble and everything else that was going on. Iowa State's defense really ratcheted up in the second half as well, guarding the 3 and just applying pressure and making, really, I mean, Fleming was the only one getting clean looks because he's just so good and he has such a great jump shot. So we beat Houston again, 70-67. Great game, exciting game. I had to travel to BYU yesterday on Saturday, February 21st, and that was a rough game for them. We faced probably freshman of the year across the nation in AJ DeBassa, and he was electric. He was, first time I've seen him this year, and he was fun to watch. He was just incredible. 29 points, made 2 threes, got to the line 9 times, had 10 rebounds and 9 assists, had 2 turnovers. One of them was just a pass that the guy didn't catch and it just went through his hands out of bounds. BYU was in control most of the game, and they were up by 9 at halftime. In the second half, Iowa State did get it down to 2 at one point, and from there, BYU just took it away. Lipsy was out for maybe a minute at that time, and the lead for BYU went from 2 to 7 or 8 again, and Iowa State could just never recover in the second half. They made a run, and they came up short, and then BYU just put the game away, and that was all because of AJ, and he is absolutely dominant. As far as how Iowa State played, Lipsy led Iowa State with 19 points. He was trying to be all over. He made 3 3-pointers, which he struggled from 3 as of late. He made both of his free throws, which is good, given his shooting percentage from the line. And he added 5 rebounds. Jefferson was okay, 4 for 13 from the field. Again, 1 for 5 from 3, which is not good to see. And then we get to Milan, who's our other big guy, our big scorer, our leading scorer. And he could not get any clean looks. He got 1 clean look out of a foul along the baseline. That was right after a timeout. And he got a clean look and he made that 3, and that was the only free look he had all night. He only took 5 shots. He was in foul trouble. He only played 25 minutes. But AJ was guarding him, and AJ is an elite defender. He gets through screens. Milan isn't somebody that can create his own shot. He's kind of come off screens, catch and shoot type guy. And if he's not getting open, then it's tough for him to get shots. He can dribble and bat down defenders and take his fadeaway shot. But with a guy like AJ, who's pretty much the same size as him, same length, same height, it's hard to do that. So, it was a tough night for Milan. Tough night for Iowa State, but they gave their best effort. They just didn't seem to want it enough wanted enough defensively on the board. They were just getting giving up so many offensive rebounds. They gave up 12 offensive rebounds. They gave up three 3-point shots in one possession, and that was just awful. Because eventually one of them was going to go down. I believe BYU ended up with a layup out of that possession eventually. But that's just gut wrenching when you play good defense for 25 seconds. You give up a look for three, they miss it. You have a chance at the rebound, you don't corral it. They kick it out again for another three, they miss it again. You don't get the rebound again, then you give up another three attempt. Before finally the guy under the hoop catches it off the board and gets the rebound and puts it back up for two. 3-point wise, Iowa State shot 33%. That's just not good enough. Not good enough at all for Iowa State. And they lost by 9. It was late game. It was over at like 11:30 midnight Central Time for us people in Iowa. And Iowa State ended up losing by 10. And when Lipsey was on the floor, the point differential was +3. When he wasn't on the floor for 6 total minutes of the game, the point differential was -13, and they shot 1 for 7 with 2 turnovers. So that just kind of highlights how important Taylor Lipsey is. I'm just still blown away by how good AJ Dibasaw was. He's incredible. Incredible. But Iowa State definitely has some issues that came to light even beating number 2 Houston and in the game against BYU on Saturday. They did do better from the free throw line. They shot 15 for 19. And again, the issue with the free throw line is it depends who's taking the free throw. I mean, there's a lot that goes into free throw percentage individually per game, who's taking the free throw. Obviously, if your best free throw shooters are taking it, the percentage should be higher, but if you have guys in lower tier, like big men like Blake Buchanan taking free throws, then, our percentage is obviously going to be lower. So that factors in a lot, and Blake Buchanan got 0 free throws in the game against BYU. So that partly explains their percentage. I don't want to particularly point out Blake Buchanan as the reason our free throw percentage is so low, because Taylor is also struggling at 64%. And then you got Joshua Jefferson, I believe, is up around 69%. Milan is their best free throw shooter at 88%, but he's only taken 63 free throw attempts on the year, compared to Joshua Jefferson's 168 and Taylor Lipsey's 77. Milan isn't really a guy that drives, fouls, and gets to the line. He's more of a shoot from outside type. So the opportunity for a foul is much less because he's not going to draw somebody reaching in or anything like that. Iowa State has 2 games coming up this week. They play at Utah on Tuesday, February 24th at 8 p.m. on FS1. And then they come home to play Texas Tech on Saturday, February 28th at 3 p.m. on CBS, which will be a great game, although Texas Tech is hurting a little bit as they're still adjusting to playing out with one of the best players in the conference, the Big 12 Conference, in J.T. Toppin. And Texas Tech should be in the top 15 at this point come Saturday, and it will be a great game. Hilton will be rocking. It's a very important game for Iowa State that they have to win. I mean, they have to win out here to maintain their double bye position for the Big 12 tournament, because the Big 12 is the best conference basketball in the nation, and that's kind of pretty proven with Arizona, Houston, Iowa State spearheading that. And obviously, the fewer games you have in the Big 12 tournament, not only the more rest you get, but the less other people you have to face that are going to pose problems and just exhaust you defensively. Houston and Arizona defensively are just top 10, I believe, across the board. And then they are currently, they're kind of tied for the double bye. There's 3 teams at 10-4. So that's not great, but the remaining schedule, they do play Arizona, at Arizona, which is going to be a really tough game. I've watched Arizona a couple times, and they're just massive across the board. And then we factor in other seeding, and it's just going to be, it's really tough for Iowa State if they don't figure out their free throws specifically, because you win games at the line, you lose games at the line. And when it comes down to the end of the game and Iowa State's missing either the front ends of 1-and-1s or just missing free throws when they need them just to maintain the lead, it's not a great thing. And that will wrap up my conversation on Iowa State basketball. And we will be talking about baseball and kind of my outlook for the rest of my podcast, not only for today, but going into the future. So baseball season is coming up with spring training, which I'm very excited for baseball. I enjoy baseball. And ever since last August, when the Cubs announced that Anthony Rizzo was going to be back with the organization in this kind of a support role, that's very exciting news, because Anthony Rizzo is my favorite player. And how he will be involved kind of beyond that with the fans is interesting. But it's always great to see Anthony Rizzo either in the Cubs attire or just around the ballpark. The Cubs did make a couple off-season moves. They signed Alex Bregman to a 5-year, $175 million deal, which I'm not necessarily a fan of. And it kind of reminds me of signing Milton Bradley kind of a little too late. But what can you do? They're trying to do something. They had Matt Shaw, who's a younger prospect, who I thought did decent last year, but they didn't. He kind of got pushed out right now because he doesn't have a spot to play. And we'll see how the Cubs turn out. They traded for Edward Cabrera from Miami. He's a pitcher who's had multiple injuries, and he's currently projected to be their 5th starter. But other than that, they still got the basics of Nico Horner, Michael Bush, Carson Kelly, Dansby Swanson, Ian Happ, and defensive gem Pete Crow Armstrong, who is extremely fun to watch. So as that develops, we will see how that goes. The World Baseball Classic is happening as well, so that will kind of affect spring training a little bit, but it's really fun to see players represent their countries. And it kind of helps people see guys that maybe don't get to play as much or don't get to get as much recognition here in the United States. So that's really great, and sometimes it leads to new contracts and among other things. So that's pretty awesome. And as far as my podcast going forward, I will be spending the next at least probably month and a half on college basketball specifically, with March Madness and the conference tournaments coming up. I will talk about other programs outside of Iowa State, particularly probably Iowa as well. The Iowa Hawkeyes did lose today to Wisconsin. That was a tough game to watch. But Wisconsin's a very hard school to read. They can get hot. They've been really bad at times. Just a very interesting team. And a couple foul calls I thought were a little questionable that went against Iowa, but that's just basketball. And then, following that, I was also watching the Iowa State women, and they blew the game in the 4th quarter, and that was also hard to watch. And I kind of thought they had a good opportunity to win that, and they just kind of let it slip through their fingers. They couldn't score offensively. defensively they were breaking down. But other than that, there's just not much going on in the basketball world today. And I would definitely watch Iowa State on Tuesday play Utah. And I'm hoping for it to be a weekly podcast, but we will see what happens, just how I'm doing, and things like that. It's hard to work up to today and talk about the BYU game, because that's still kind of fresh. Kind of frustrating we lost that when we had the opportunity in front of us to potentially win a title, or win out and share the Big 12 title. But that's also just basketball, so. And that's what makes Big 12 so great. I should be back with an episode next week on March 1st, probably in the afternoon or evening time. And it'll be about Iowa State again. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more about Iowa and how they're doing with skirts and their tournament how their tournament looks, not only within the Big 10, but they're seeding for the NCAA tournament. I hope everyone has a good week, and I will talk to you next week.